Well, there's a lot of talk going on right now about what is constitutional. We got a pretty big ruling coming down by the Supreme Court. Most think it will happen in June, and it has started a lot of conversation. Of course, there's been a lot of conversations as the government has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger on exactly what is and isn't constitutional and what rights do we, the people, have laid out in the Constitution. And, of course, one of the topics we'll touch on today, along with a lot of topics about the Constitution, what is the role of the states in the Constitution? Bubba, you've alluded to it many times. We've talked about it many times, and we brought in a guest today, Jack Criswell. Now, Jack was formerly affiliated with the Rutherford Institute and has done a great job of defending people from more of a conservative point of view on exactly what is and isn't allowed. He has become just a student of the Constitution, just studying it extensively, and it must be pretty frustrating for you to know the Constitution as well as you do and realize how most of your fellow Americans don't know the Constitution very well at all.
True.
And a lot of that is because, especially when it comes to the government schools, which is what they are. I know we like to say public schools to make ourselves feel better, but they really have become government-run schools. And there's a little bit of revisionist history that goes on in those classrooms. All sorts of revisionist science goes on in those classrooms. And so it's really not surprising that we have a generation of adults who really don't know what the Constitution says.
When you have textbooks that give 1 page to George Washington and 4 to the Beatles, you know we got a problem.
Right, yeah, right. Now,
overall, let's just talk about the Constitution and where the people who wrote it came from and what their thought process was. The Constitution is a binding document of states. Correct? And it's a limiting document telling the federal government, here are your limits to what you cannot do on the states.
Even better than limiting, Bubba, the Constitution made it clear that the federal government only has 17 grounds of authority. They only gave them, the states got together and only gave them 17 grounds. That's in Article 1, Section 8, if you want to look it up. It sets them out for us.
Because really, when all this came together, each state, as we call it now, was kind of operating as its own independent country. So this was a binding document to put the states together, thus the United States of the location of where they were
sovereign states.
Right. So if you see how it started, you realize how that was a limiting document to protect the states from a too powerful federal or centralized government.
Correct. And the point I'm trying to make, you're right. The point I'm trying to make is it's actually more powerful than just a limiting document. It only granted them a certain rights. It's sort of like they only gave the kids 1 key to 1 car. They didn't just give them keys to all the cars and say you can't drive it over 30 miles an hour. They didn't give them the key to the car at all.
Right.
So that the states got together and said, we only going to give you 17 grounds of authority.
But over time, that has changed.
Well, yes. In fact,
that's eroded. Would that be a better word for it?
That's one of the problems I wanted to address this morning. The backstop was supposed to be the state legislatures. And so where we've gone wrong here in the past 100 years or so is that we get mad at D.C., and we should, but we forget to get mad at our state capitals. And those are the guys who really were supposed to stop this. And I brought some quotes you probably don't want me to bore you with, but the Federalist people talked about how they expected the state legislatures to stop federal encroachment. And my point this morning is
they're the referee on that. Really,
correct.
The bottom, the very end.
Yes.
That has the power to go. And you're over our agreement.
Yes.
So we're not going to honor that.
And thanks for mentioning referee. One point I want to make this morning is conservatives talk about something being unconstitutional, and they're right. But people don't understand what it means. The Constitution is not a bunch of aspirations. It's not like the 10 Commandments. The Constitution is more like the rules of baseball. They got together and said, this is the way a perfect game of baseball should be played. And when you mess with it, you're messing up the most perfect system anyone has ever devised in 6,000 years. It'd be like some federal bureaucrat coming in and saying, you know, it's not fair to just have 1 batter. We should have 5 batters. And when you complain, he says, well, we'll fix that by adding 40 outfielders. And when you complain, he says, well, we'll fix that by appointing a judge, and he'll determine what's fair and not fair. And then when you complain, well, we'll appoint 10 judges. And you end up with all these bureaucrats determining what's fair, whereas you already had the rules of baseball, which we know are fair. And that's what the Constitution is. It's a system for a perfect government. And in that system, the states have the power. And so we can fix what boat we're in now still, because that plan is still there. I want to point that the founders anticipated we would be in the exact same spot we're in now. This would not have been a surprise.
Human nature is to drift to the area we have found ourselves now, and even beyond if you look to countries who have been around longer than us.
Correct.
Could we almost use that as a time machine viewer into
yeah.
the future of where we will be?
Yeah, and the founders recognized that. That's a good point. They looked at 6,000 years of history and said every government goes exactly where this one has gone. Republican, Democrat, no matter the party, whenever you shovel power to one central spot, as we have, it will corrupt.